Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith, along with Roberto. How do you say it? Roberto Calla. We're sitting in Boynton Beach, Florida. We're at the FM Tennis Performance Center. By request, I tell many junior tennis players we don't take requests. I was asked to talk about assessments, and we're prepared for that. But what we're going to do, perhaps it'll be a mini podcast. I heard that term the other day. I think we've had some maxi podcasts. But we're going to talk about competition, to be competitive. I think it's a problem. I know it's a problem. Let me correct myself. I know it's a problem that's becoming more and more complex, where in tennis we could focus on many other sports too. It's just getting kids to compete. Roberto, why don't you start? When you take kids to tournaments, you've been taking kids to a tournament every weekend for the past several months, and you tell them what? What do you tell them?
When we go into a tournament, the most difficult is that not only our kids, I noticed it's all around the world in any sports. They are under continuous stress, and they're scared to play. We are controlled under sick society that's all about winning. No matter what, you gotta win.
When you say scared, we always talk about Braden, the late Vic Braden. I want to coach the kids. There's just a few seconds left on the clock. It's a basketball game, and they want to take the shot. No consequences. They're just going to take the shot. You know, there's so much written about Michael Jordan, missed more game-winning shots than anyone in the NBA. I don't know if that's still current, but with enjoyment, suffering, why don't you elaborate more on being competitive?
It's hard to say just, you mentioned the word enjoyment. It's go and enjoy. Really, being around competitive kids is no enjoyment. It's it will be lying if you say just go and enjoy. We have to be honest with our kids if we want them to become a players. Is that how we can help them that suffering, because it's gonna be suffering, they can turn and have some enjoyment with that. That is gonna keep them in the game. That's gonna keep them looking for more competition. If we're gonna lose, not only, it's all around. I mentioned you that I like one coach said in Peru, soccer is gonna disappear. I don't know, in 100 years, maybe more, maybe less, but it's going to that way. Kids are not playing free anymore.
Well, one thing that's disappeared for the most part in America is neighborhood sports, pickup sports, sandlot sports, however you define it. You drive through the neighborhoods and kids aren't playing outside. It has to be structured, it has to be organized. It's you just don't play in your backyard anymore. Play with the kids across the street. I do think when Lair mentions as a competitor, you have to have a sense of enjoyment. You have to enjoy competing. I love it when a kid's down 6-love. And they, say for example they're down 5-love, and they announce it. Set's over. Okay, you go to the bench for the 2-minute rest period, regroup for the second set. But a kid's about to serve and it's love 5, and they just go love 5. Then they go, oh, that kid's special, because most people, they're too insecure. They don't want anyone to know. Okay, they're losing badly. There's just so much interference created, and it's outside the court too. I mean, you don't want to start pointing fingers, but it is part of the Spanish system. With you think of Nadal, suffering's part of it. But you think about people. Tomorrow we'll have some kids on the track running 12 400s. There's some suffering, but you can have a sense of enjoyment for that.
Yeah.
But Then we have IOD. I think of always Dion Krupe. IOD, Dion, what's that mean? Injury of day. It just seems like, we talk to Matt Clore all the time, and he told me before he went to college, he did not know what a PT was. It's amazing now. It's, kids are seeing physical therapists left and right. And, and I think the physical therapist from a tennis standpoint, someone, say they sprain their ankle. Well, you get one of those Gatorade jugs and say, bring it to practice, and, you can't miss practice. We'll have you sit on the Gatorade jug, and you can hit serves and drop it, hit forehands out of the air, and people can toss you balls, and you just got to find a way. But yeah, to be competitive, Jim Lair, another one is match perception. Anything and everything is going to go wrong, and you're going to love it. And you're a big-time problem solver. Go ahead, if some other thoughts on competition.
Let me finish about soccer. In soccer as well, the kids are afraid to take the penalty kick. They're afraid to make mistakes. Like you said, it's too much instruction now. They are not free. They're not playing outside anymore. So I think in any sport should be order and adventure. If we will be all order, like right now is happening in soccer, it's too much instruction. 10 years kids, 12 years kids are telling you just one or two touches and you pass. So how you can develop a player like that, if actually we encourage in my days under 12, under 14 to be a ball hugger. And that's why you develop all those skills. Now it's no anymore. Hey, you gotta pass. You gotta do two touches. Their kids are not playing outside. They're not free. So it's no adventure then. Same is happening in tennis. You go to a tournament, and the kids is all concerned about parents. Actually, one coach mentioned is that with the two hands backhand coming and take over the backhand, there's no anymore one hands. We lost the underspin, we lost the finesse, we lost the volleys, we lost the net, and we lost the beauty of the game.
No, it's interesting. With Braden, has a great tape on doubles, Go for a Winner, and he calls it, it's about mixed doubles, but really the principles are all the same, mixed doubles. He just calls it a fantastic adventure. Yeah, you're going to climb the mountain, baby steps, one step at a time. When you climb the mountain, are you going to be the first? Are you going to be the fastest? Are you just going to enjoy the challenge of climbing the mountain? Yeah. With, say when Borg retired, a lot of people say, well, how could he retire? And say, well, to put yourself in Borg's shoes. I mean, if somebody's climbing he was Wimbledon final 6 years in a row, but he won it 5 times. Well, if you climb Mount Everest 5 times, is someone going, why are you going to climb it a 6th time? So that thing about live and let live. But there's so many things. Sport is so structured. One of my sons played hockey, little kid hockey. I actually just met someone from Detroit. Both my sons played for Little Caesars hockey outfit in Detroit. At one time, they had put more hockey players in the NHL than any other group. But anyway, one of my sons played for a team where the coach of the team was the father of the goalie. And if you know anything about ice hockey, you can get the puck. They've used the blue line, the red line, and they've changed the rule back and forth. But at that time in little kid hockey, you had to get it over the red line. And the term is you could dump it in. So you're putting the puck at the other end. So now the father of the goalie feels pretty good because the puck is 200 feet away from his son. So there's less chance for them to score. but they're not working on moves. They're not working on carrying the puck. They're not working on stick handling. They're not working on passing. They're just giving the puck away and letting the other team. And granted, even in the top pros, that's a play where you go in and you forecheck. But that's the one thing in ice hockey. It's shinny. That's a great thing about pickup hockey. It could be 40 people on a rink. It could be an outdoor pond, and all different levels, and they're playing one game, and that's where people have the freedom to try new things. And I think it's fantastic for you to say the beauty of the sport. When we go to a tournament here in South Florida, it's pretty much a sure thing that everybody has the same game style.
Yeah.
It's just, say if it's a right-hander, they're going to be moving to the left, they're going to hit a forehand. And you said it, there's no underspin, there's no approach shots, volleys, overheads. And because people want to win at an early age. So we always say that in the 10 and unders, if 64 10-year-olds play a tournament, who wins? Well, first of all, one 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And, who's the smartest person at the tournament is the parent of that 10-year-old. I mean, it's a 10-year-old. And the parents are climbing the fence. And again, back to the sport I grew up in. When you get to be 12, you're a peewee. The division before that, you're a squirt. I'm in the squirt division. So perspective is being taught. I said to a young boy today, I said, well, you played 2 sets and lost. I said, I just want him to play 4 games of ghost doubles, one-on-one doubles. I said, you good for 4 more games? Can you play 4 more games? And he said, with who? I looked right at him. I said, so disappointed you asked that. Yeah. You play anybody and everybody. Tennis players are very cliquey that way. But more thoughts on being competitive?
Trying always to help new athletes in any sport. You can check on, in these days, everything. I encourage, this is a great story, world-class soccer player, national team, Palermo, missed 3 penalty kicks in one game, and when he missed the second one, and he go and grab the ball and said, this is my game, and he missed it. After with the media, I like his response. He said, and this will help a lot of athletes in any sports. He said, when I get into sports and be serious and be competitive, I knew there's gonna be a good days and a really bad days. Today was a bad day, and he moved on. Now he's a great coach.
Those are 2 great words. Move on. Yeah. I think real world tennis, and it's certainly not a child's fault in this country where it's so expensive to play tennis. And the parents, say it's mom and dad both at the tournament. There's going to be that conversation. What does it cost? The training, the equipment, and on and on. So it's almost like the kid becomes a consumer, and they're judging. Is this good? Is this bad? But it's so much just around the tournament. Is practice good? Is practice bad? They have a website. They have 5 courses. And there's like no accountability. No, you've been told that we have these 5 courses. Watch the 5 courses. Do your schoolwork first, but just chip away at it, and then get organized. I think also too, like young kids, as soon as they get out of bed in the morning, okay, they've been trained. They got to brush their teeth. But say if they're going to regular school, they're on more of a time clock. But even if they're not, when they get out of bed in the morning, they got to be competitive. When they sit at the table, they got to be competitive. I think that's one great thing about Bollettieri's of yesteryear. I don't know currently, but I'm sure it's similar. It's a large program. So you're at breakfast, you look to your left, and you look to your right, and there's someone who wants to beat you. Now here in Florida, and it varies from one place to the next, but what happens is a golf course is built, And around the golf course, they're going to build townhouses and they're going to build luxury homes. And tennis is really an amenity. And there's all these small programs. Years ago in South Florida, the players would just congregate at these public parks. You just start in Miami, you go, okay, we have Flamingo Park. And then there's several. You go, Miami's a big city, but then you get up into Hollywood, there's David Park, and then Holiday Park, which is now called Jimmy Everett, because Chrissy's father had worked there for so long. And you can see the competition. That's one thing, too, about indoor tennis, is here's the land of the car trunk pro, and with people don't see what everybody's doing, so have the exposure to how your fellow competitors are training. In these snowbound cities, everybody has a much better idea of what they're doing. But I think as soon as you get out of bed, another one we talk about is years ago in this country, affluent kids, when they turn 16, they'd get a job. Yeah. And they would have to pay for things. And okay, how am I going to, okay, we need to have you earn money. We're going to buy a stringer because it's too expensive to have everybody out string rackets. Like the young man who just won the French Open doubles. I know you helped me with Austin Krajicek when he was younger, and he pulling for him to win, and he had 3 match points to digress, and a couple of people that have relocated here from Texas. The father told me that the 3 boys cried when Austin lost that with his partner. But yeah, you heard afterwards a kid from El Salvador that he had to do this and that to just make money to play. He had to suffer. So it's not a matter of just suffering between the lines on a tennis court. I tell parents, we have kids come and stay with us. We've been doing that for a long time. Parents don't even know how much they do for their children. Does a kid even know how to wipe peanut butter off a knife? And if they can't do that, it's a pretty safe bet they can't rake leaves or pull weeds. But if they had to work, I remember it was the Bad News Bears and Mark Hamlin, who I grew up with. We went to this movie called Little League Baseball, Walter Matthau, the first version. Great movie. Actually, John McEnroe's first wife, Tatum O'Neal, was in that movie. And father came up because Mark had coached his son the previous winter in ice hockey and said, hey, what does my Johnny need to do to be a better player? And Hamlin, without hesitation, said, make him buy his own skates. Make him buy his own skates. And maybe that's not realistic, but parents need to find a way to have their kids work instead of where the parents are just giving. And then we're trying to focus on how do you become more competitive. How did someone get a job? I think many times no one's a self-made person, but do they really venture that far away from home? And do they actually find themselves in a position that no family member, no friends connected them with that job? That they just found a way to, not stand alone, not to stand up, but they found a way to figure it out. Go ahead.
But, Austin, we saw him growing, and we were around for the society, outside. He lost. For me, he won. He's a winner. He's in the final of Grand Slam. I watched the entire match. For me, he was the best player of the 4. And he has so many years to still play the game. So really, I can help the kids to see that, he won. For me, he won to open up for him so many other years to play.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that Philip Farmer was a very upbeat guy. I really don't know Philip that well, but I remember coaching against him in the juniors, and he had several years with the Bryan brothers. But just to get people that little edge to believe in themselves. But no, he did play extremely well. Dojic, what an athlete. To say who's the best athlete, the young man from El Salvador. I mean, And, the fourth player, too, should just rattle off their names, but oldest player ever to win a Grand Slam. Agassi lost so many times in big matches to Sampras, and he would just say, I was happy to be part of it.
Yeah.
Happy to be part of it. No, just to compete. If you just show up and you do your very, very best, you leave it on the court, yeah, you're a winner. You don't want to, Jim Lair, it's a hidden scoreboard. It's not, you win in so many different ways. It's a bonus to win the match. But, for Austin, I remember, mispronounced his name, Gabe Armelio. For the longest time, Gabe, go way back, where just briefly one summer, I think he was 22, I'm 21, and we worked for All American Sports. And he one time told me that Austin's the hardest worker here. He's talking about it, and it's Bollettieri's, and there's like 150 people. He said, yes, he's always the first one there in the morning. He was never called the fastest, but so at Bollettieri's at that time, he'd go in this gym and just run in a circle. And then they would tell you what court to go to. We sent him so many places. It was kind of a fun challenge for me with his parents. He played 25 futures before he went to college. He went to college a year early, too. Yeah. He was at that level where he could fast track. And it was a challenge where Rob would say, hey, do you know anybody in this small city? And do I have someone teaching there? Because that's where Austin would stay, to just lower the expenses. But it's not just a matter of Austin being competitive. His parents had to be competitive. The sacrifices that they had to make. We don't have, I don't have that many original thoughts, but success, it's got 3-letter S's. And struggle, sacrifice, and suffer. And no pain, no gain. The stopwatch. You ask kids about their personal best. We tell kids, all right, they've been here. Do they actually do what we tell them? They'd be competitive. But they're the parents listening. They're the ones who brought their child to us on an airplane, checked into a hotel, rented a car. And we say, well, around your neighborhood, okay, mark off a mile, mark off a 40. Here's the spider drill. You can do it in your driveway. You just create all these personal bests. And do you do it on your own? Are you self-motivated? You can take the horse to water, but can you make the horse drink the water? To get a player to be self-motivated. I think in that sense where kids do get programmed out, I think it was better where kids were taking private lesson once a week, calling people up, doing baskets, hitting the backboard. A junior player calling an adult player, saying, hey, can we have a standing match? Say if you could do it every Tuesday evening. So many of those things have gone away. Not only the volley and the overhead, but a kid being resourceful, responsible, self-reliant. A lot of those things have gone away.
I think it was a great thing that a player for Salvador won a Grand Slam. It's great for Central America, South America. The little bit we know about this player, that he was suffering in futures, challengers, stringing rackets, trying to survive, and I'm 100% sure it's going to motivate a lot of kids in Central America and South America. You mentioned that tennis is expensive for the American kid here. Imagine for Central America and South America.
Oh, and they have to travel to get to a higher level of competition.
Because the tennis is in North America or in Europe. So we can drive 1 hour, 2 hours and go to a tournament. They have to buy a ticket for the coach, find a place to stay, and look for the tournaments. And they're still making players. And, I will say that my respect for the Argentina, many generations is still making players with all the problems they have. And they are far away from tennis, from competition, further than Peru and Salvador. But was a great thing that El Salvador has a Grand Slam champion. It's going to motivate a lot of young players. They're coming out, and it's gonna be great also for the rest of the world to know a little bit more about El Salvador.
No, it's that old adage, if he can do it, I can do it. They have that belief system.
It's always one generation bringing another generation.
It's like when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, 1954. I would guess, but I'd say it was 4 people broke the 4-minute mile in the same year, 4 to 6. We have a fact checker out there. With the teams, you go back to during the Australian Open, one of the reasons the Australians did so well is the Vietnam War. A lot of the Americans didn't play full-time tennis. They stayed at the university level so they could be deferred from the draft. But yeah, being away from home with, the parents, now a kid, it's like they're never away from home because of the cell phone. It's like the umbilical cord was never cut. Well, the telephone doesn't have a cord, but it just amazes me. So many things. In the U.S., one thing that we have backwards, and there are posh clubs around the country that have clay courts, but for the most part, Florida's the only place where your kids playing clay court tournaments on a regular basis. And an American kid doesn't sweep a clay court. So we had a commissioner of tennis that said juniors should sweep the court. Juniors should sweep the court. Juniors should help out. I think, if we're sharing value, and hopefully we are with people who follow our podcast, and we will get back to this topic that people requested, just talk in length about how we assess a player in the beginning. But just when you show up at a tennis facility, say, all right, you're starting a program, and okay, everybody go pick up 3 pieces of garbage. But kids walk by it, and it's not my job. That's not my job. They'll just walk right by garbage. Say it's a public park. Help clean the public park. You are part of the public. And they have to be taught to do that. And so I do think that you hear the term haves and have-nots. One of the toughest things I've done in my career in tennis is to teach tennis in third world countries where kids are, you're teaching some kids while there's some other kids pick balls up.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I said, well, I'm here. I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, but I'm going to stay here at lunchtime, and I'm going to teach the ball kids how to hit tennis balls. But one thing with the shortening of scores, you can't blame that on the kids. Why are they playing 10-point tiebreakers? And I think to turn to Chuck Creasy, who's waving that flag. He's our number one patriot on that cause. And kids should be saying, oh, there's empty courts. Is there a place where you two can go play and just play best of 5? Girls too. And I think the girls should be knocking on the door going, yeah, we want to play best of 5. The men are playing best of 5. We want to play best of 5. If it's going to go in any direction, that's what it should happen. The women should play best of 5. Why not? But I think it was just a matter of being lazy. Competitive people are not lazy. Let me say that. I mean, some people we know, sometimes that talented kid that they're lazy in practice, but when it comes down to compete, their laziness may hurt them. But when you say, okay, ready, compete, the fire's there.
Yeah, and you mentioned be away from home. That's a great topic also to help competitive players. They're willing to sacrifice, being away from home, being away from parents. We have some kids living near 2 hours, 3 hours driving. and they are not making the sacrifice to be away from home. If they're going to be competitive and they want to play high-level tennis, look at players like Mark Safin, Gabriela Sabatini, on and on and on, all the sacrifices they did. Safin went from Russia to Spain when he was 11, 12 years old, and away from home. Safina did the same. Sabatini left Argentina when she was 13, 14.
And also, too, of course, in Savin's case, his mother's a coach and what have you, but many times when that happens, like say Tommy Haas was at Bollettieri's, I think he was 9, went home, then he came back. We heard Steve Denton on one of these podcasts talk about how Kevin Curran went home, got homesick, and his father sent him back to the University of Texas. You have the helicopter parent becomes a submarine parent. They take the kid down, down, down. And then you have the boomerang kid. The kid just comes home. There's so many kids in the U.S. after college. And times are tough. I mean, what's going on with inflation and this and that and everything right now. But, the kid's 27 years old. He's living at home. That's not too competitive. Joey Johnson, and I think this comes from the LDS Church, worthiness. It's a pretty safe bet. That's where he got the title. I have to talk to him about it. But he's got a business and a book, a business that's based on the book that he wrote. And he's recently updated, Worthy to Win. Are you worthy? Have you done what it takes, the will to prepare versus the will to win? And you can't buy it. It's not on a shelf. But I think also, too, is that tennis players, they really have to know where they are, where point A is. They'll never get to point B. I don't think they're confused. I think they're totally confused. I say they. The triangle, and it's the parent, the player, and the coach. It's a big, big world. And we did this one time with a young girl who was all stressed out, a girl from the Midwest. And we added up. It was 362. It was just 14 unders. I said, I want to know how many junior tournaments this weekend in America for 14s. The 17 sections, and it took somebody a while to put that together. 362 tournaments. And you're just playing one. So you just don't understand where you stand, where your position, your level of play, your standard. Give yourself a chance. You're 13 years old. You've been playing the game 3 years, and you're a long, long ways from the grass courts of Wimbledon.
Yeah, and it's impressive to know that Safin speaks fluent Spanish, and the sister the same, and all the stories about away from home. I think, and this is for young players as well. When about 12 years old, you should be willing to make sacrifices. 13, 14, you must do sacrifices. It's and that requires being away from home, away from friends, parents. But that is the question: are you willing to make sacrifices?
Well, age 12, that's just a chronological number. Yeah, the kid's been on planet Earth for 12 years, but how old are they really? What's their capacity? What's their maturity level? And I don't mean physically, but just how are they wired? Do they really know what it's going to take? And I think you mentioned learning languages. For people to become fluent at tennis here in Florida, a lot of children that we work with are bilingual. They speak Spanish at home, and they leave the front door and they speak English. They become fluent, but they're not fluent in tennis. They're so far away from being fluent. Canada's a good place to mention, is not to pick on the Canadian Tennis Federation, but it's really the hungry immigrant. It's not the Canadian Tennis Federation. Obviously, they do a lot of great things. But when you see your parents, and you just rattle off, all the players. I think of Sampras, Agassi, Chang, Roger Federer, his mother, his wife, immigrants. And they see, they just know the history that they had to find a new way, learn a new language, find a new way in a new country. I don't think, like in this country right now, because of the IT industry, there's a lot of highly educated, highly qualified people from India living here. And I don't think, I've worked with literally now hundreds of Indian kids, are their parents telling them what it was like for them, what it was like for their grandparents? And, I do think it's unfortunate that not many children spend enough time around their grandparents. I think that's something with Coco Gauff I've read where two of her homeschool parents were her grandmother one and grandmother two grandmothers. Wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge with time. I tell kids all the time, you have no wisdom. You're too young. And, I ask kids, do you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you listen to your parents? And then it comes down to are the parents teaching them the principles, the values to be a competitor? Or are they saying, well, you're served, you're double faulted? And too many times the parent, they really step out of bounds when they start talking about tennis. With our tiebreaker test. If you're going to feed balls to your child and you don't think you're a technician, you're not a technician. Here's a drill you can do. And then it's just follow the directions. Be competitive. We tell people all the time that 10 and underline now is universal, international. And do tiebreaker test too. And I like how Andy Fitzell said, well, doing that drill, initially we teach people to volley cross court so you learn to come in and close off, angle the volley. But from a technical standpoint, you're much better off to do that drill. You hit the volleys straight ahead. So you have to hit the first 5 shots over the 10 and underline. And our kids calling up their buddies, you got to get a practice partner. Let's go do that drill. And I understand with safety and, this also how the days work is, can a kid get to practice early? Can they stay late? If practice is from 4 to 6, they come at 4, they leave at 6. That's not how it works. You come early and you stay late. That's how you become competitive.
Yeah.
It's the same in every sport.
Yeah. And you mentioned also parents, what are your thoughts about the parents going to a tournament with the kids every weekend or on the weekends, that's also happening all around. Parents are taking the kids to the tournament.
What happens at tennis camps now, it's absolutely amazing, these overnight tennis camps. It happens with day camps as well, but a kid will get on their phone and say, Mom, Dad, they have me in the wrong group. There's just too much communication. A kid should be able to go to camp and the camper, the person in charge should say, okay, you can have your cell phone, call your parents every day, give you the phone at 7 p.m., call your mother and father up, tell them you love them, and try to ask them how their day went. Like say when a kid's at camp and they become homesick. But if they're on the go, generally they don't have a problem until they slow down. And then when they get homesick, then they get too much attention. But with, why don't you answer that? We'll come back to it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think what I see a problem is that parents trying to give the kids a lecture every weekend. I think Big Brain was great saying that encourage your kid all the time, reprimand once in a while, give a lecture once a year. I think that was the best message for parents. And I'm trying to help the parents and the kids that are going to a tournament every weekend, just encourage them all the time. Because if you're going to give a lecture, it's going to be hard for the kids to keep competing.
Well, I think with parents, it's a noun, but it's also a verb. The life is tennis, tennis is life. You'll hear this, the only two things you can control are your attitude and your efforts. You can't control whether you win or not. Like the other day, I reprimanded a young kid. Last name was Blanchard, should be able to tell you. I think it was the 80s. It was called the 1 minute manager. Reward, reprimand. 1 minute, 1 minute. And too many times the reprimand's too long. But these two young players were going to play a set. And so it's a 12-year-old girl who's really improving and a 15-year-old boy. And the 12-year-old girl ran to get the balls. And I told the 15-year-old boy, you should have done that. You should, hey, wait a minute, I'll go get those balls. It's not like they had to run very far, but so I think the manners, I think the class to teach that. But I think the parents, again, you don't need to be talking about cross-court and down the line. Many times what happens, it happens with TV commentators. The more they say, the less they know. And, I think a lot of times parents can't really help themselves. But one term I heard a long, long time ago, I should be able to tell you the woman who wrote this article was great. Conscientious neglect. In other words, you know where your child is, you know what they're doing. Can they play a match and you go for a walk? Well, I really enjoy watching my kid play. Well, okay, fine, you can do that, but that doesn't mean that you're going to become the coach. You're going to become the coach. But if they're moving and they're breathing and they're letting the athlete out, they're going for their shots instead of what was the score. They're UTR. You should have won that match. So they have to lose the second time.
Yeah, and what the players in South America are doing is they organize a group of players and they travel with a coach. And that is working really well. The kids become more independent. They learn to take responsibility. And travel to America, to Europe. And that system is working really well. They made more and more players in all levels.
Well, parents, the expression, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. There's no junior tennis without parents. The joke is, where's the best place to develop tennis players? And the answer is an orphanage, no parents. Or why do college tennis coaches, Raleigh Grossbaum sent me an email today that tennis this past year was 62% foreign players for women, 63% foreign for men. And it had a breakdown for every sport. And tennis is leaps and bounds using the most foreign players. So the joke is that college coaches want to have a foreign player because their parents only come to visit once every 4 years. But with reflective thought, I spent 10 years in Texas. And the cities are all 4 miles apart. And there was many, many times where the parents didn't go. Now here in South Florida, in some ways, it's such a bonus. All the tournaments are right here, and you don't even have to check into a hotel. I mean, really, from Miami to Palm Beach, it's a megatropolis. It's just one long city. Is that a 100-mile stretch, perhaps? And so, well, it's an hour and a half. We'll just drive back. We won't take a hotel. And also becomes much more expensive, where it's just when you always go as an individual versus going as a group. A lot of times young tennis kids, they don't know what it's like to be on a team. We interviewed a high school coach last week, and that's a great thing about high school tennis. Alex Slezak was telling us, all the positives of being a high school coach and everything you learn from being a teammate. I think that also to the train in junior tennis. Do the 18s pull the 16s? Do the 16s pull the 14s? I would love to see the kids in the 16s. They can find some time within the course of a week at a tennis facility where they train is to help the 5, 6, 7-year-olds. So then you have a family, and then it really is a program. But a lot of times in junior tennis, it's stratified where the older kids, they don't even know the younger kids. It's so cliquey. But I think also being competitive is, just like someone who finds time to give back. They're not selfish. They're altruistic. They find time to give back. And I do know that tennis players, okay, fair enough. They have to be self-centered to a very extreme degree to be the best they can be. But that whole thing about being a complete person, we made a big mistake in this country in the 90s where everything was about self-esteem. The participation trophy, don't mark an English paper with red ink. If it's crummy, it's crummy. It's no problem. You don't want to be a cheerleader. You don't want to be saying, that's great when it's not great. But it's like, no, you got all the time in the world. You're a young kid. You got a palm-up serve. You got to go to work. And are you going to be competitive? It takes a competitive mind to change strokes. And someone asked us, our listeners have heard that, how long is it going to take me to change my game? A little less than the ice age, because you're thinking about how long it's going to take. You're not thinking about, okay, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning. They've told me, here's the mirror routine. And we tell the kids all the time, you got to set up mirrors. Then they don't do it. The parents, you spend all this money and your kid's supposed to do mirror routines at least twice a day, just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
But that's all being competitive. But people have to have the know-how. I think a lot of times, even though you spell it out for them and you tell them, it's like you've got to see it, even then when they see it. And it's that magic number, the Green Berets, that song, 100 tested, 3 are selected. 3% of kids play college tennis. You tell 100 kids to shadow swing, 3. Maybe it's less. How many kids are going to find a backboard when they first walk on a college campus where they're going to go to college? But yeah, where does it come from? I think being around fellow competitors, to have your kid be exposed to watching really good tennis and watching all sports too. You and I made many trips to the University of Florida, and it's like you're being it's like it's an Olympic Village, and then take the tennis kids to walk around and just watch the other athletes. Because I do think that, to make an ass out of you and me, people just assume they're going to play college tennis. And it's not easy. It's just not easy. What do you got?
Sports, the people outside are not interested anymore to watch good soccer, good tennis, good basketball, good hockey. They just want their team to win. Don't being interested in good tennis and good soccer, that is not helping the new athletes come in. I'll go back again. They are just focused, I want my team to win no matter what.
It's with fan is short for fanatical. At the U.S. Open, could name many places, Indian Wells. There's some really quality matches being played, and people just want to watch the very best. And I have a hard time understanding that. Okay, you've watched Nadal, Federer, Djokovic. They come into your living room. They're such great players. They're in final after final. And now you're on you're at a tournament site, and look around and it's, have an appreciation for the sport. And it doesn't have to be just watching the marquee players. With, I think being a student of the game is to be competitive as well. It's getting people to do the right things. We have so many young tennis players that are just looking at YouTube highlights, and they're just fantasizing. And, in all fairness to the kids today, the level of play has gone down, way down. Does that mean that world-class tennis is not really elite. Now, if you watch what's going on, the latter rounds of the French Open for sure, even, throughout the French Open, but I just say that because people are focused, okay, I'm going to watch the semifinals on the Saturday and the finals on the Sunday. When I was a kid, power skating came into ice hockey. So you're working with figure skaters. And the figure skaters are better skaters than the hockey players. And in my mind, it's the same in tennis. Well, in hockey, if you can't cross over going this way, forward, this way, going forward, two ways, obviously in each direction, you cross over backwards. If you can't skate, you can't play. You just have to be able to skate to a certain level. Doesn't mean you have to be the fastest, but you have to be able to skate. In tennis, you don't have to be able to hit the ball. You can have a palm-up serve. You can play with a palm-up serve for 5 years and not even know it. So then there's also the side, is the coach being competitive? Is the coach really studying? Is the coach really working? And, is the coach competent enough, skilled enough, say, yeah, come to my program and I'll show you the kid with the least amount of athletic ability. That's a competitive coach. And I want to get the worst kid at my club playing well. That's a competitive coach. Instead of, well, I'm just going to work with a select few. That's the old thing with Vic Braden. To judge a program is you take the kid who puts the ice cream cone in the middle of their forehead. So it's not just pointing the finger at the kid. I really think the biggest problem with kids lacking the competitiveness now, you mentioned society, it is even bigger than the parents. How are the parents talking to them? But how does the whole picture work? And, it's so shallow. What's your UTR? You don't ever hear a kid go, what's your mile time? How many push-ups can you do? So they're just missing it on so many different levels to be competitive.
Yeah, comparing just happened in the Champions League, and you can tell me if that can happen in tennis. Real Madrid just won the championship, the Champions League, and playing really bad, playing ugly, we'll say in English, We have other expression also, parking a bus and the goalie and waiting for a chance and score, and beat the best teams in the world. I got phone calls and people getting excited and celebrating. They want to say, "What are you celebrating? That was ugly. You shouldn't celebrate that. That wasn't a good soccer." That can happen in tennis, in soccer. You can play really bad, 90 minutes. In the last minute, you can score and still win. Compared with tennis, we go into tournament in the weekends, and the kids don't have a serve. They can put the ball over the net. They never go to the middle of the court. They never hit a volley. They never have an underspin. They never hit an overhead, and they win.
I think the mindset, you ask young kids today, who's Vince Lombardi, tennis kids, and they don't know. Well, they certainly heard of the Super Bowl and the Vince Lombardi Trophy, be brilliant with basics. Well, the story with Lombardi is you win on Sunday. He finally became a head coach in Green Bay. They win on Sunday, but then they felt like they lost on Monday. You have to ask yourself the mindset, are you a fan or are you an athlete? You can be an athlete sitting in the stands as a fan. You're an athlete. You're a former athlete. You're a student of the sport. You're just not that roller coaster. Certainly, okay, there's a place I want my team to win. But how do you react to that? And losing is very much part of it. It's very much part of it. if you study sport, it's not a Disney picture. People, they lose. Tennis players are born out of defeat. You measure someone's character by how they respond to defeat. No, for sure. I think that you can win. I mean, again, I can't even comment on soccer, but you can win. And then afterwards, it's like these top NCAA college football coaches. They may celebrate for 2 days and they go back to work. And, they're not a fan. They're not fanatical. That's their job. That's their process. That's their life. And it's like, okay, that door is closed, new season. And, the same thing with a tournament. I do think that parents keep their fingers crossed and have so much hope. And it's really, really sad scenario. Next weekend, they will do better. For most young tennis player playing, and I'm not trying to be sensationalistic, the light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming right at them. And they have holes in their game that are not being addressed. They lack knowledge. Things that we put on the other podcast, I think, from Bill Jacobson, a green light point. And Carlos Goffey talked about that in one of the podcasts. You're up 40-love. You're up by 3 points. The math's on your side to take a risk. Well, kids have to have the knowledge to do that. Then you're a 40-15, 30-love. Now, it doesn't have to just be attacking the net, but you can be more aggressive. You can take a risk. And they don't. We even tell kids, okay, if you hit an overhead, you automatically win the game. So have some fun. And they still don't go to the net. I know you talk to kids about being creative. We used to take kids' hands and tape it on a continental, where they had to play continental on everything. Emergency shots. Well, you have to play with a continental grip. A fun drill to do today is the kids playing and say, okay, other than your serve, you can't hit topspin. They've got extreme grips. So they have to play a ball flat and go forward and have to volley. They can either play with slice or flat. They can't play top. They look at you cross-eyed because they haven't been challenged in that way. And that's one negative of the UTR, young kids used to go out and go, okay, I can win this match. And they would experiment. Oh, yeah, I'm not going to lose. But I'm going to try some different things. I'm going to come to the net. I'm going to play a one-handed underspin backhand the entire first set, serve and volley. And because of the way the UTR works now, they won't do that. Yeah. And also, too, it's not just a UTR, it's a 10-point tiebreaker. So it's like, no, I'm not going to try to give away a set. So there's many, many things that are problematic with tennis, problems that need to be addressed. But there's no leadership, there's no commissioner. It's like, who's in charge? It's the wild, wild west. The UTR has a lot of positives, but anybody and everybody can run a UTR. And it should be a structure where you do, say, in Miami, Orlando, Tampa, here in Florida, or wherever it says that you do well from the French system, and that's what the UTR is based on. So if you can get to the quarters this week, and it's not so expensive, so everybody's playing, and you get to the quarters and you move on to the next week. And so say if it's, this is for people with a UTR as low as a 4. 4 is the 6s. So I know Dave Fish has spent so much time on trying to improve. He dedicated a lot of time to the UTR. And, he's always said two things: instruction and competition need to be different in America, different. And I do think it's easier to coordinate, regulate competition than it is instruction.
Yeah. And also how we can tell our kids that I just mentioned soccer. I think who just won the Champions League, Real Madrid, will be much better for them to lose and learn more from that. Now everybody is celebrating, or everything is fine when you win. My point is how we can help the kids to understand that sometimes we get more when we lose?
Well, I do think with pro sports, I'm not one to be able to talk about the salary cap and, how are the players going to rebuild, reload. But in ice hockey, for example, we don't have this in tennis, but are you doing it through the draft? And are you bringing in new players, young players, or are you trying to buy veteran players? Someone becomes a free agent, and then it becomes a bid. Who can afford who? In college tennis, the way to judge a college program, does someone take a player, maybe they're number 12, they have a roster management of 12, and usually it's a little bit larger with the men than it is with women. But to take a number 12 player, even if you have them redshirt, how many college coaches can tell you that they've, I think there's a lot of, pretentiousness where like, oh yeah, we're going to help you be a pro player. Then, well, how many players from this university have played pro tennis? Even been top 200 or made money. But do they just try to reload? How many times does a kid, I guess it's around 85%. I shouldn't say I guess, I've read that. It's not my research, but if you don't make the lineup as a freshman, 85% of the time you don't make the lineup. One of these Power 5 conferences. And, that's not, again, just to point to the coach, point to the player, everybody involved. But, what do they do 24/7? But then, does a program have a history? And that's where we talked to Jim Verdick. People go back to our podcast that we dedicated to Coach Verdick, and then we had his son, Doug. A typical Verdick freshman, they're carrying the water jug, they're helping with the first aid kit. And by the time they're a senior, they're an All-American. But, then from a competitive standpoint, obviously people have a choice of so many different podcasts now. But if someone were to listen to our podcast, that's somebody who's being competitive. It's the same type of the thing where can the person push away the chocolate chip cookies? I think it's more discipline required to push away the chocolate chip cookies than it is to go run 5 miles. But it's both being competitive. And but it's being competitive to listen to these podcasts. Certainly there's a lot of podcasts where they're interviewing, people that are very well known in tennis, and they're connected with the Grand Slam level, and I think that's our Hall of Fame. That's the International Tennis Hall of Fame. It's just for the people that are around pro tennis for the most part, and that shouldn't be the case. Braden used to always say that you could be teaching in your basement and be one of the best tennis teachers on the planet. But yeah, being competitive. Sometimes the more you have, the biblical side, the more you have, the less you have. And when you give it to kids, what we've assembled, and it's really just homework. We put tennis on a silver platter. And I do think that even though when people come to see us, it'll be a really small group, but we've had a lot of success with kids doing well in juniors and well in college tennis. And we've had people that we've developed from the time they were a beginner to play pro tennis, to play Grand Slam events. And that people think, well, everything, just like my parents are going to take care of everything for me, and these coaches are going to take care of everything for me. But no, really, it's the challenge is the kid taking responsibility. I'm the one who's going to make this happen. I have to be competitive.
Yeah, and you have students that play all levels. You play local tournaments, play college, play Grand Slams. But there's now a new generation coming with cell phones, 500 channels, too much distraction, and how we can keep those kids with a dream, and that's a really challenge. How we can help them to stay in the game and stay in competition was more difficult. Keep those dreams and stay competing. Stay willing to go to a tournament, because that really, after we make them hit the ball well, how we can keep them in the tournaments, how they can get to college, how they can get to futures and challenges and grand slams. Now it's more difficult than before.
Well, Harry Hopman said it about Australia. What happened to Australian tennis? I mean, it's not, what they did in the 50s and 60s. I mean, could that ever be duplicated? Doubtful. But also, too, back in the day, with the Iron Curtain, the Soviet bloc nations, tennis was suppressed. And when the wall came down in '89, tennis exploded in Eastern Europe. And just to see what the Eastern Europeans have done, they've had less, they have, I'm going to get to hit tennis balls. And this desire to work hard and achieve. You go to Europe and you go to the under 14 tournaments, Tennis Europe. I know you've done that. I've done that. And you can just go down the list, and the kids that are from the poorer countries are the better players. Yeah. The more you give your kid, the worse it is. And, it's not to belittle anyone, but I watch some kids sweep a floor, and I go, do you have a maid? Now, my mother, two different women helped my mother clean house. But I can remember so many times when the person would come over to clean house, we would all clean house. And that comes back to, it's not my job. Kids are doing less and less, but parents need to be proactive. The late Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Be proactive. You have to every day know how much time your kid's been on the cell phone. That's a discipline. That's organizational skills. Parents use electronic gadgets to control their kids. It's just amazing. They want their kids to be quiet. They just hand them an iPad. And it used to be go outside and play. It used to be go kick the ball. In that sense, coming back to what I mentioned earlier, sports are too structured. Who's going to be the better soccer player? The kid who's playing in the streets, or the kid whose parents are carrying a Starbucks coffee? Their kids have their jersey with their name on it. And it's, everybody's got uniforms. It's just Saturday morning, and parents are screaming from the sidelines. And it's just an organized activity. It's, you've alluded to, it's not sport. It's fun. But, does the kid go home? Does he have a soccer ball? Is he, and I know so little about soccer, but it's just common sense that the same thing would apply to basketball. Is the kid dribbling the ball in the driveway? Is he practicing after practice, practicing before practice? And no, it's a dream killer. Especially the phone. The phone is a TV. They don't even need a TV now. The other day we were watching the doubles. What a great match that was. And Austin Krajic's so great that he was part of it. But it was a long match, and we had kids that could not be engaged. Jim Lair, total engagement. They could not be switched on, and they couldn't watch it. They were working their phone while they're watching the match. Put your phone away. Also too, when I grew up, there was only one TV. Wealthy people just have one TV. I remember my parents, I'm an old guy, but for their 25th wedding anniversary, we all chipped in and they got a colored TV. But many times be 3 generations watching a sporting event. And you're the youngest kid in the room, you got to be quiet. This is serious. People want to watch, they want to listen. Kids don't even watch tennis. How could you not watch, say, the U.S. Open final? We're housing kids, they're goal-oriented, they're homeschooled, their parents are making all these sacrifices. We're watching the U.S. Open final, and they don't even watch it. Talk about appreciation of history. Or then just watch it and listen to what the commentators are saying, listen to what everybody's saying, even coaches in the room. Be in the room and ask questions. Hey, there's a commercial. Ask a question. We want kids to actually take notes and chart. We ask them to chart their own matches. Talk about being competitive. We have 5 poles, 5 GoPro cameras. Get your own hard drive. Film yourself playing, and then we go down to just do 20. Just chart yourself playing 20 points. And they don't do it because they take their phone out of their pocket. And it's just that's not going to help the competitive juices. Yeah. I read where great South African player Wayne Ferreira got Francis Tiafoe, who's obviously made a jump. Got him to be off his phone. And then are you going to accept it? From the book, Positive Coaching, Dim It. And you can use 3 different words for the letter D: desire, discipline, dedication. Discipline is much more important than talent. Tiriac, Kim Whitberg was on as a guest. Don't even mention the word talent. And talent means it's still in the bottle. Potential, don't use that word either. I think the old adage, my dad used to say this all the time, if you chop wood all day, you'll have a pile of wood. You're going to get what you deserve. You're not going to get what you expect. You're going to get what you deserve. Yeah. And, today we watched one of our older players playing a visiting player. In his body language, he was threatened. He was playing a younger player, and he had the poor me syndrome. Just pity party. Have the competitive spirit, have the competitive look. Yeah. And, I think if people could bottle up competitiveness, it's again, I think that people come to see us for technique. Well, first of all, you can't teach technique if you can't teach character. So we have all this information, and I like listening to you talk to the kids after the tournament. Why you elaborate on this? You played an animal.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What do you got?
The cell phones are not going to go away. We have to recognize that. This is new generation with new times, and the cell phones are not going to go away. So how we can help these kids? How we can help these new players? I'm gonna take advantage now, and I'm gonna trying to help these new players. You that train so many players, and so many years, from beginners to the Grand Slams. You take them, from beginners to Grand Slams. Let me ask you, what player was the hardest worker? What player, the second one, what player was the most competitive? And the third, what do you think was the player you helped most?
So hardest worker is one.
Hardest worker is one. Most competitive, second one. And you think the player you helped most, that we were ready to take this, you make the video, and you said, I really helped this player.
Well, it's a lot of tennis players over a lot of years. With the hardest worker is the person who gets up in the morning and does what they don't want to do. Yeah. You do what you don't want to do. The person is really successful. They make those phone calls they don't want to make. I've been in different settings. You and I were in Tampa for 15 years. And I remember the name of the road, Dale Mabry, a lot of traffic. Yeah. So we started practice at 9, which is very unusual, but we did that because then we could be at practice in 10 minutes. But if we had practice start at 8, it would have taken us a half an hour to get there. So, but where we had the players set, you could jog to hit a backboard. And how many players did that? Now, you and I helped out. We interviewed Chad Berryhill. He was a coach who was there for 5 years. So we ran a program for 10 years for this junior college program. So he was there the second 5 years. And we had a nice lounge, a big classroom. It was a lobby, basically. Public facility, Hillsborough Community College, 28 courts. And I used to have kids, you just tell them you're a lobby rat. You just hang out in the lobby. But it comes down to that number 3 again. There was 3 girls in 10 years that did what we told them to do. I said, get here every day and go straight to the backboard and do those routines. Then they all went on and played Division I. We have to talk about John Posey.
Yeah, that was
a guy who...
It's in my list for the hardest worker.
That he's gonna brown bag it. That's being competitive.
Yeah.
That most kids say they don't know what that means. That means you pack your own lunch. Yeah. And low maintenance. That's, again.
Austin will be in your list and for hardest worker?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think with, to be at Bolletari's and have Gabe Vermeulen go, he's the hardest worker here. It's like this hockey player, Martin St. Louis. It's easy to be the hardest worker. Okay, so does that mean you're the hardest worker of all time? But, within your environment, you're outworking people. And you actually intimidate people through your work ethic. But a Posey, pat myself on the back. I didn't have information. I had bad information. I was taking professional lessons. But I spent endless hours on the backboard. But Posey type of guy where, okay, you just need water. If there's a water and there's a bathroom, you're good. You're good. You can hit the backboard for 8 hours. I'm going to injure. Don't play left-handed. Hit the ball easy. Maybe, the way the elbow's structured and especially the elbow serves, you're not going to go out and hit 8 hours of serves.
He can beat a lot of players with a lefty.
Yeah. That's another thing too, is we tell players, learn to play with your opposite hand. Yeah. But do they actually do that? They say, okay, he told me to learn to play left-handed. We're set up right now, and one positive where we are is we're catering to a small group of players, but the park has lights till 9, and it's safe. They can just get on the sidewalk and go to the backboard. They can show up early, and they go, okay, we've had 2 practices. I'm going to get my schoolwork done, but I'm going to practice a 3rd time. And then I'm going to ask, how can I help out? And with Dennis Vandermeer, he would hire people if they kept the room clean. If they'd be part of his housing when they'd work in a summer camp. And if they didn't, and he would check it himself. And, Dennis had so many contacts. What an amazing individual. He didn't fire people. No, they're a B. They're not an A. They're not an A because they don't keep the room clean. I'm going to send them off. I'll get them a job somewhere else. Because a B to Dennis Vandermeer is still an A in the tennis industry. But I think the hardest worker...
Posey.
We have to get Posey online. But a guy who can hit the backboard from sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
What's the next one? Most competitive?
Most competitive. I have some names, but I want to hear from you.
Someone I didn't coach, but I was around, was Carlene Bassett. Her husband, Robbie, said that she would run after a golf ball. She got to be 8 in the world. She had children. She became a mom very early. She retired early. They said she was a female Jimmy Connors. People always talk about how competitive Connors was. Just the fight. They just won't give up. I'm meeting less and less of those people. Less and less fighters, less and less competitors. Because life's made too easy for people. But it's hard for me to name one person. Who do you have on your list?
I think, and I'm always trying to help new players. I think his competitive was against him. I met when he was 11. I think Michael was so competitive. Has the best strokes. the best work ethic, the perfect kid, and I play him many times.
Well, yeah, you could talk to Rob Krychek. You could talk to Austin Krychek. I'll tell you a story about my oldest son. Is my younger son went on a recruiting trip. He just wanted to go to Florida State. He was ranked 2 in the country. He could have gone to quite a few places, but he was really dead set on going to Florida State. So he's on a trip with a player who went to Florida, but it was 2 top kids from Florida. And they had one of the seniors with the 2 coaches or 3 coaches. They took him out to dinner. And Mikhail really didn't want to go. So it's a recruiting dinner that his younger brother, Connor, is at the table. Mikhail didn't want to go, but they said, no, you got to go. And obviously he had some wins over his younger brother. But he had the captain of the team and the other recruit, they had both lost to him love and love. My son, he never learned to lose.
Yeah.
He never learned to lose. And, that's another whole subject in itself. But there's many people like that. It's amazing. Like say Andy Roddick, I never coached him for 2 seconds, but I was around him. The Austin family. I was in Texas. They were in Texas. I came to Florida. They were in Florida. But I watched Andy many, many times. In fact, he came to our practices a few times. A kid named Hazley, a kid named Brooks, and just watching these guys play. I think some people are so competitive that you can't teach them. But it needs to be managed at every level. And obviously, winning at a young age can be a curse. Mikhail was very, 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 very competitive. But I think of others too. Not a student of mine, but I think being around Wayne Saban, who's a top 10 player in the world. We talked to Manny Diaz about Welby Van Horn. I don't think Mikhail had that type. He was too young, but Welby would play ping pong. He would find a kid who had the thickest glasses and he'd put on the Coke bottle glasses that we would call him. He'd play with his opposite hand. He'd tie one shoe to the table, to the leg of the ping pong table. I mean, just had to have it be challenging. Again, not a student of mine, but John McEnroe, one of the most unfortunate, unluckiest players, is not Ryan Harrison, but his brother Christian, all these injuries. So I'm at the U.S. Open. I have credentials where I can go everywhere.
Yeah.
And 2 nights in a row, I watched McEnroe. I think Christian Harrison was 14. But at that time, it was a really good match. And McEnroe's out there. And he just like, okay, this is the perfect match for me right now. I want it to be competitive. And it just has that switch. No, I think I've coached some competitive players, but
it's in my list also. Right of the heart, he in anything he will want to compete.
Yeah.
Soccer, cards, anything.
His name's come up on this podcast. Great competitor. Had holes in his game like all of us, and we were never really too happy with how that was addressed. In other words, I remember Bruce Burke was his assistant coach, and he complimented us by complimenting Riley. Say he's the best prepared player. He could come in and he knew how to play doubles. Then strange enough, at one point he's playing 1-up, 1-back, but he came out of our school of tennis because most kids get to college, they don't even know where to stand when they're playing doubles. He's competing now. I think that's a good way to sum that up. Is I've been told he's playing pickleball. So very, very competitive guy.
And for our listeners, Ryder played the U.S. Open, played Nadal and the center court. And
I was there. It was the same year that Krychek won with Kalamazoo. So he got through qualies and he won his first round. And but he's someone who we had hoped that when he went to college, that he would have made some changes in his game with, the regressed palm up on the serve. And, he played so much mini tennis when he was a kid. He didn't have the best forehand grip. But, I mean, there's a guy who, certainly had bad luck with injuries. You just think of one of his college teammates, Kevin Anderson, was in the finals of the U.S. Open in Wimbledon. So I'm sure Ryler still thinks, geez, because he was in the arena with them, with a guy like Kevin Anderson when they were teammates. But yeah, he's very,
Ryler,
very
great
competitive.
kid, great personality, so competitive that the other day I got a phone call from a friend. He was playing in one park. He's 4-5-5-0 player, and Ryler talked with him and say, "Oh, Roberto and Steve," and he said, "I'll bet you $20, and I gave you 9 points, and if I beat you in tiebreak 10 points, I get the $20." And the guy called me and said, I had a chance. I have one shot down the line. I hit the top of the net, and he got the $20. And Ryder laughed, saying, "Tell Roberto thank you for my gas."
With Lee Trevino, the great golfer, it's competitive when you're playing for $10. You only get $5 in your pocket. With competitive. I think actually, to me, there is a difference between work ethic and competitive. The kind of the cat that can kind of lounge around all day, but then you say ready, play.
Yeah.
They're pretty chilled, but the last one that helped the most.
You can't miss that one. You can't miss, Steve. You gotta be right in that one. I was that day when he walked into the facility. So
I think of a girl whose mother said, "How'd you help me the most?" And one of our listeners told me that she appreciated this.
I'm gonna help you out. He play a Grand Slam. I make it easy for you.
Let me finish this one thought. Okay. One thought is this girl. I told the mother, and she said, "Oh, high school graduation. Oh, you did so much for our daughter. What do you think? How did you help her the most?" I said, "I got her to quit rolling her eyes." To play the Grand Slam. Who'd that be?
Raven
Clausen. With
definitely, you help him a lot.
Yeah, I just saw his father at an international tournament. Great guy. Raven his mother passed away not too long ago. What a great guy. He's got 2 kids, Reagan and Carter, boy and a girl, Democrat and Republican, named them after presidents. With no, I don't. I think they just like the names, but with but you always think with Raven, bad luck with injuries, 3 knee operations, didn't really start to climb the ladder till he was 29. Eric Buterak really helped him out by, hey, I'll play doubles with you. And Eric had the points, the way it works if you don't have the points. So they didn't do very well after that, but they had this magical run where they got to the Aussie Open finals. He was in the Wimbledon final. He loves the game. I mean, not when he's traveling with his wife, but years ago, he'd get his practice in, but he'd just stay at the site and watch tennis all day. Singles, doubles, young players coming up. He's very articulate as well. For many years, he was on the Davis Cup team, but he didn't play, so he would work TV. I was flattered the other day. I talked to his dad. Well, that was a couple of weeks ago now. That Ravens, I think he's 40 this year, and he said, well, he's going to have a coaching career, and I hope he collaborates with you. I mean, with Raven, loves the game. I think that Raven, people might be surprised to hear this, but with a little bit more inner belief, so fast, so athletic. Not a big guy, not a big serve, but there was definitely some mismanagement. Not to point fingers at anyone, but at one point we had a sponsor, and the sponsor had primarily supported boxers and didn't really understand how tennis worked. And so for way too long, Raven was going to these $15,000, $25,000 tournaments, and he was like the first seed. And you need to have a mix where, you got to be able to get into the challengers. But if it's like, okay, I've got to play some qualies, so I'm going to go all the way to Australia, play the qualies. And now they have money in the qualies, but before they didn't. a little bit too humble, a little bit too humble, I think. He used to always say, no ways. I go, yeah, there's a way. There's a way. But I remember when Wayne Ferreira, class act, he used to send Raven, before Raven turned pro, he would get a care package from Wayne Ferreira. One time he flew off to help Wayne with some type of clinic. And Wayne was helping him with serving. Now, Wayne is very good friends with Craig Tiley, and Wayne was helping young Raven Clausen with his serve and his forehand. And I said, well, what was he saying to you? Did he say anything that was, contradictory? That contradicted what you were working on? And he said, yeah. I said, did you speak up? Did you say, hey, all he had to do is say, no, you're spending time with me, and I had trained Tiley, and, and just, if he had had the confidence at that point as a young guy to just have that discussion instead of just looking at him with glossed eyes and go, you're Wayne Ferreira, you've won $10 million, and going, just nodding your head. And I think that's where you put all this together, being competitive, is some guts involved too. That's where, in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, for a kid to speak up, for a kid to question what they're being told, for a kid to fight it. If a kid's always saying yes, 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 the coach goes, do this, and they go, yes, yes. But the kid has to ask why. They have to have a competitive mind. Well, why am I supposed to do this? But what baffles me is, I tease and say I've been saying all the right things to all the wrong people for my whole life. There's the 2 million time clubs. Now, one of our students I'm picking on, he's a bright guy, he's in Ivy League school. I didn't have the numbers to get into an Ivy League school, so I'm giving him a hard time today. And I go, I just spent the day with you. We went to an event. We filmed it. We came back. We looked at the film. We looked at 3 matches. And today he played a practice match. And he didn't do anything I told him. He's still running around his backhand in the neutral area of the baseline. People listen to our content. They understand the language. And, granted it's a pattern, but do it in the offensive area of the baseline to run around your backhand. Don't run around your approach shot. When the point's over, where are you standing?
Yeah.
And when you come in, and time after time you come in, and the ball's below the level of the net. But the brain's so powerful and so sophisticated, but yet then people get stressed, and they're just programmed. They're programmed to be stressed. They don't have the it thing. The it thing is that you can make changes in the clutch. You can adapt, you can adjust, no panic button. But I like what you said. Maybe we didn't say that on air, but people need to bring it all the time. I say every day is a tournament.
Yeah.
But your kids, they need to practice like they play and play like they practice.
Yeah. With some stress, with some adversity, because it's gonna be like that. It shouldn't be like, oh, it's loose, it's practice. No, create some adversity.
Well, we cover fitness. The kids that are working with us think they do so much. We go to the beach once a week. We go to the track once a week. But they have to be told what to do. And say, for example, it's just circumstantial. We have not run the beep test in several days. If a competitive player would remind us of that. When are we going to run the beep test again? But if they're not competitive, they're going to just keep it to themselves. Hey, we're not running the beep test. I don't like the beep test. The beep test means, and we covered that, it means suffering.
Suffering, yeah.
And it's a different type of enjoyment. I enjoy the beep test. This is, I've got to the point where I'm running at 12.5 or running 13. And when I do it, a lot of times I vomit afterwards. But bring it. And then it's that commitment. It's like, well, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to do it twice a week. We tell kids do 10 minutes of yoga. Just do 10 minutes of yoga. Your parents don't have to take you to a yoga master. You're a beginner. Just start with 10 minutes of yoga. Then get organized. Be true to yourself. Say, we're going to do it 3 times a week. And then, we do these lists you can put on the refrigerator. Are you a hero or are you a zero? Are you do it? Can you do it? Yeah. And that's not my expertise, but you say, okay, put your palms on the floor. We have some kids, they can't touch their knees. They can They can touch their earlobes. Can they touch they can't touch their toes, but they can touch their knees. They're not flexible, but they don't work on it. And then you tell them it's a problem. And I think that's the problem today is that I think an American junior tennis player, and many people come here, they're not an American junior tennis player, but they become Americanized. And they think it's all hunky-dory, everything's going to work out fine. And it's only going to work if you work.
Yeah. And just to the listeners, Raven is from South Africa. I think he went to Spain before he came to Tampa.
I have to double check on that. Martinez. My recollection knows that he doesn't have that much time. You might be thinking of Brazil, who's a great athlete, Jonathan Scopira. He was in Spain.
Yeah.
He was in Spain. And I always tease where, he put a resume together. When he was with us, he couldn't really speak English very well, but there is a guy who really could have been good. He just needed to get in the right hands. And remember, he put down that he was a hitting partner for Raven. And Raven, being humble, I showed Raven said, "Hey, dude, don't put on a piece of paper that I'm your hitting partner." He goes, "I would love to have your athletic ability." He just had, size as well. I mean, he wasn't that tall, but he was just, he was he was a very, very strong guy. No, I think with Clausen, when he came to us, he was number one or number two, JP Damdo in South Africa, but so he was a really good junior. I remember DeHart was younger, and DeHart's in high school, and they played, and when Raven started with us, DeHart, the match we had charted, that he was a little stronger on that given day, but I just think a little bit different programming. It's amazing. I know the people on the Pro Tour can look back and fine line between, getting to that next level. I know my son Connor, performance anxiety. Carla Navarro, who's helped us with the podcast, she had my son at a national tournament. He lost in the finals of the 18s, and it was a great experience for him. He was 5-love up in the third, but the young guy who won, he had won nationals in the 14th. That's a good example that you got to lose to win. And Carla said to him, about him, which is a compliment, he was best when the knife was at the throat. But then the genetics come into it. You have to blame me for that. How fast was he? But also too is that what he says about his tennis is that he didn't have the dream. He grew up with Austin Krajicek, and Austin wanted to be a pro, and I think that's so important. But I think all these guests we've had. I think what Kim Wittenberg said is that I don't think you have to stuff it down a kid's throat. Is that obviously they want to play Wimbledon. They know what that is. They want to be a pro, but it's like you just want to be a good kid. You want to be a good citizen. You want to be a hard worker. You want to do all these things that you can do, that are very basic decisions based on common sense. And if you keep doing those, you're going to be a winner. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be. And how few people, you think of the Grand Slams, especially on the men's side. Not many people play college tennis. College tennis is a goal, pro tennis is a dream. But those are good questions. The hardest worker, the most competitive, help the most. I think coming back to biblical teaching is, the Lord helps those who help themselves. And people just miss the boat. They just like that boat's already sailed. And the one thing is you can't get back time. The competitive person needs to have time management skills. Someone who does really well in college, they just have the time management skills. They have the maturity. It's not rocket science. It's not like you're inventing something if you're getting an undergraduate degree and you're getting A's, but you're just organized. I think that's another problem too with, I've been around scholars. I know you've been around scholars. So a scholar is somebody who's, they're reading two different books at the same time that have nothing to do with their major. And they're, Posey, I could read in a snowstorm. But with the kids who get all A's in school, their parents are just telling them, you're awesome, you're awesome, you're awesome. And I do think that that ratio is, I love how you say kids need to be encouraged. But the ratio is reversed. I mean, we don't need to, it's like a kid, they don't want to be looking for the compliment, where, they need to be encouraged, but at the same time, the ratio between a pat on the back and a kick in the fanny. I don't know how many people are getting the kick in the fanny, but really in the end is the player needs to get to the point where they're their own best critic. And, it's like with nutrition, some specialists will say, okay, you can have one cheat day. And then, you take a group to a restaurant and go, oh, today's my cheat day. And they order the wrong things because it's their cheat day. And they, so people can, every day is not a golden day. Every day can it just be 100%? But do you self-evaluate? We've been very unsuccessful with, and I think we made some improvements to it. First time I was exposed to it is Jim Lair had a monitoring chart in the 80s. How many glasses of water did you have? How many hours of sleep did you have? All these different things. How many phone calls did you make for your own game? Do you have a record of matches? Do you have a journal on how you did in those matches? And people aren't doing that. They're not doing that. They just think that it's going to be a Disney picture and, I'm going to win the lottery and everything's going to end up hunky-dory. But yeah, why don't we wrap this up on just being competitive? We'll come back to some people who requested for us to talk about the assessment. But we came in the room, we started talking to a couple players about being more competitive, and I said, why don't we just do this on the podcast?
That was great, actually. I'm 100% in the moment, and now it's in our list, it's in your list, or favorite player or favorite student that's Posey that made the podcast even more interesting,
Well, we need to get Posey on. I mean, with he within our program, he doesn't understand. I think you mentioned Ravenclaw and that's Posey. I went to get Raven out of the Players Lounge at the U.S. Open, and Posey's like, no. And I think I told this story earlier. Is that he said, no, Raven's too busy. I said, are you kidding me, Posey? You're his hero. And Posey, the listers, I mean, if we're doing the Iron V, we're doing the plank, he's going to just outdo anyone, where run till you die. But yeah, everybody needs to have a Posey in their world, a Posey in their program. Oh, yeah. For 3 years in Texas, we coached a young man who, and our place was not wheelchair friendly. And he had to roll the wheelchair across this field to practice with us. It was amazing 3 years that no one complained. Picking up balls, the guys, they pump the chair and they put the wheels and the balls in the spokes and they just keep going. In Texas, like most places in the South, they're hot and humid. And, but I do think that coming back to these programs with golf courses and tennis is an amenity and there's 6 courts here and there's 8 courts here. People really aren't exposed. I mean, I think you can ask a kid, who's the hardest worker you've ever been around? With Shane Vincent, Dave Anderson spent a lot of time coaching him. His father coached him. He came to see us several times, and I remember being in a room with maybe 15 players, and he was there. At that point, he was playing futures. And I said, Shane, who's the best person you've ever practiced with? He said, Federer. But someone like Federer, even though, you can read where, the coach told him to do this exercise, and he was gifted and he could do it very quickly, maybe on the first try even. But I do think when people see him at a tournament, that's not how he practices. I know people that have gone to practice with him, and he has to have two people, one for the first 4 hours and one for the next 4 hours. Nadal's getting everything he deserves. I mean, as far as, who's outworked Nadal. And, as far as character lessons and being competitive. But, from your sport, Nadal comes from soccer. Yeah. His uncle was a member of the winning team. So, I think parents need to stop and ask, what have I really been exposed to in sport? Do I really come from jockocracy? Have I really seen sport? And it doesn't necessarily have to be tennis. It's a bonus if someone's a tennis player. But in our industry, actually, if someone's been a player, it's like, well, what did they do after their playing career to become a coach? If they just started coaching, it's almost a red flag. I mean, it is a red flag. Like, warning signals are up.
Yeah. Being the hardest working Posey, at the same time, he's very competitive as well. He speaks fluent in Spanish. He speaks French, and he's working in Russian, and he's Russian. 4 languages. I really encourage the kids, the players, to learn a language. You just mentioned get exposed. When you speak a language, you get exposed to other culture, to other world. For me, it's a pleasure just to talk fluent in Spanish with Posey.
I think for myself, people will tell me I'm a hard worker, and I'll say, no, I'm pathetically lazy. I spent so much time in Germany that, and there's ways to do it too. You Rosetta Stone or whatever, there's ways to make your car a classroom. And if you want to conquer a language, you can. That's the joke. If you speak 3 languages, you're trilingual. You speak 2 languages, you're bilingual. You speak 1 language, you're American. But one thing about Posey, though, singing his praises, is that he really lacked in the inner belief system. So I think that is number 1. Number 2 is the work ethic. Number 3 is knowledge. But maybe we're missing the whole point where, you have those 3, but really the overriding is, are you competitive? My brother, who was in pro hockey for a long time, assistant coach, a scout, assistant GM, said he wishes there was a way just to measure the desire that a person has. And you got to have that burning desire. And I tell people all the time, and if you want to be a tennis player, kids come to us and their game, they're 14 years old, 15 years old. In their game, they have to rehaul. They got nothing they can go to the bank with. Their serve, the return serve, their forehand, their backhand. But the human spirit, willpower, if you make the decision you want to be a tennis player, it's like Lair says, whatever you put energy into. You want to have a shiny red car, you can have a shiny red car. If you want to be a tennis player, we have a player that, we usually start practice at 7 a.m. On Saturday, we start practice at 8 a.m. And I said to the player, you already practiced, right? He thought I was being funny. I go, no, I'm not being funny. You got up, you jogged down to the backboard, you hit for 30 minutes, you jog back with buses leaving, and you've got 30 minutes in investment of time. You always work for yourself. The people that have put in a lot of free hours learning how to teach and coach the game, that's being competitive. I was competitive learning how to teach tennis. It's like, okay, I will work nights. I will live in my van. After work, I will jump in a swimming pool as my shower, my bathtub, illegally with a bar of soap, and I will be at Vic Braden's at 5:45 in the morning. That's being competitive. I want to be good. I want to be a good tennis teacher. Being competitive, what's your goal? I want to be a better tennis teacher. And then that lifetime learning, if the parents should really preach this, is a kid has a competitive savvy to make tennis a vehicle. And they put all the blood, sweat, and tears into tennis, and that's going to help them in their next venture. That's going to help them in every aspect of their life. But, typically, though, and it's scary, if someone's lazy when they're 14, they're lazy when they're 40. I'm old enough to have taught people for a long, long time, and yeah, how's it go? The leopard doesn't change their spots. The zebra doesn't change their stripes. And so the sooner the better that someone can have a work ethic. I do think, and I will shut up here, is that the kid today is rightfully overprotected. Let me say it this way. They're rightfully underprepared because they're overprotected. I understand where parents overprotect their child too much. You know, you can't live in a glass house, but with, you know, okay, there's a fence around the tennis complex. You know, the coaches have been through all the you know, the profiling, the you know, are they an upstanding citizen? There's no bad blood here, and there's nothing going wrong here. It's a healthy environment. It's a safe environment, and then let your kid play. You know, I always tell people, I ask people, you have a dog? And they go, yeah. I go, you go play catch with your dog? They're not keeping score. They're wagging their tail and they'll run all day. You know, you have to have the mentality of a dog. That's what they called David Ferrer, is you're out there, you're playing catch. And, you know, kids are very spoiled. If a kid, you know, the way they act about winning, it's not going their way, they're spoiled. They've had so many things given to them. And, yeah, we have to, overall as a group, tennis needs to be revamped because, you know, kids have their own chaperone, their own chauffeur, and everything is being done for them. And it just doesn't tie into what we were doing in this country when kids were learning to play in the 60s and 70s. It's just different. And granted, kids weren't using a Babolat racket and they can slap the forehand, but are they really learning the game? And yeah, the competitive skill set. But everybody around them has to be competitive. And in American tennis, when you go to a tournament and all this money is being spent, and we talk about the problems of American tennis, and the scoring system shortened, they're playing 10-point tiebreakers. The back draw, they're playing to 4, no ad, 10-point tiebreaker. We're not being competitive. We're being competitive when it comes down to making money.
Yeah.
And somewhat, you know, we're not in a position to do that. We're trying to contribute to tennis in our own way, but that's where the guardians of the game have to be competitive for tennis. I think in America, capitalism is not perfect, but, you know, not to say I'm a socialist, but we're not being competitive for the sport. We're not being competitive for each other. Older players are not calling younger players. They're not giving back. If everybody were to play with a younger player every week, tennis would be so healthy. But tennis becomes very cliquey. Anyway, competitive juice. Rocky. I'll end with a Rocky quote. If you want to dance, you got to pay the band. And I think that we have a lot of people who want to dance, but they're not paying the band.
Yep.
All right, Roberto, what else? Anything?
Just to tell to me, young players, tennis could be an amazing way to be a better human being, but also can be a way to become stupid.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me going on that. There's, stubborn kids. Some kids are so stubborn, they're stupid. But, if someone's played tennis for 3 years, tournament tennis for 3 years, and they haven't served in volley in 3 years, I mean, we could go through like boom, boom, boom. We have all these things on Facebook. We have over 10 years, closer to 15 years of daily content. And, and it's not to be negative, but, here's 50 dumb things. And, to be hanging onto the racket, with a Western grip, your elbow pointing down, the racket's almost hitting your earlobe. In all fairness to the young 9, 10-year-old kid doing that, they don't know it's dumb. And then the consumer knowledge, a lot of times the parent, who they're blindly writing checks for that, they don't know it's dumb. Yeah. But yeah, we need to do a much, much better job. And I think that's where Dave Anderson said it many times, or I've repeated what he said many times. The theme for tennis is back to the future. When you say soccer, to hear that, soccer may go away, is that common sense is going away. And just throwing money at a problem isn't going to make it better. It's going to be just what's principally sound, what's ethically right, and it's just Yeah, it's all right there, but I think there's a lot of confusion. In tennis, I'll shut up finally, but education, education, education. But listeners, thanks, Roberto. Thank you very much. I hope we said something that will help you out. Adios, amigos. Number 96. We will come back to the request.